Okay, so as you can see, I've entitled this talk Bodily States of the Image, Proximity and Distance in the Performance and Video Work of Mona Hatoum. And in this talk, I'll focus on Hatoum's early work, encompassing as is suggested, performance and video. And this is work that was mostly produced during the years 1980 to 88, or actually will go up to about 84. And I'm just going to select a number of these, 94, and I'm just going to select a number of these works to discuss rather than giving a comprehensive or exhaustive overview. My interests lie with the conjoining of the body and image, or what we might see as the ambivalences between body and image in the world today. So principally, I'm interested or I'm concerned in my work with the relationship or blurring of the boundaries between the body and the image in contemporary performance and or moving image practices. So thinking about this today is to consider the way in which digital or post-digital technologies and modes of surveillance act to produce the body as a kind of image, so that our experience of the body might become dematerialized, an experience that occurs through the image or through the virtual. On the other hand, we might say our experience of the image might be bodily. That is to say that we might feel the image, as someone like the philosopher Brian Masumi has suggested through his notion of affective modulation. In his study of the US terror alert system, he suggests that we feel colour, and colour affects or controls, is used to affect or control a bodily response. So in these two examples, I see this kind of ambivalence or kind of confusion between how we understand or experience the body and our experiences of images. And I'm going to talk about this in relation to Hatoum's work. So I think that we could say that we live in a kind of that we live a certain type of ambivalence between what we experience today as a so-called real, as mediated and real, so-called real states of the body. So today I'll test out some of these interests in relation to Hatoum's early work, which very interestingly explores the limits of the body and of imaging technologies, and of the imaging technologies of the time. For example, in works such as So Much I Wanted to Say from 1981, in which a live performance is transmitted via satellite and the artist's voice via telephone. But I'll talk more about this later. So I speak today not as an expert on Hatoum, but again with an interest in particular concerns that I think are activated in aspects of Hatoum's work. This relationship, this mutable relationship between body and image. As Emma said, Hatoum exhibited here at Modern Art Oxford from the 5th of April to the 28th of June in 1998. The exhibition was organised by Contemporary Art, the Museum of Contemporary Art Chicago, and curated by Jessica Morgan. Significantly, the exhibition included the works Corps étranger from 1994, a video installation, and Light Sentence from 1992, a large installation that utilises light to profound effect, as well as a number of the video works that I'm going to discuss today. So corps étrangers and light sentence are, as I'm sure you know, amongst the most well-known of Hatoum's work. Hatoum's work is most often discussed through her personal biography. And as Jessica Morgan notes in her catalogue essay for the exhibition here in Oxford, this is not always the most satisfactory way to approach the work, but it's certainly the most kind of dominant way. In fact, Hatoum begins her 1998 interview with the artist Janine Antoni, an interview that was published in Bomb magazine and is often discussed. Hatoum begins this interview by remarking upon her dislike for interviews, for their tendency to focus upon her biography and to interpret her work through that biography. She states, and I quote, "I dislike interviews. I'm often asked the same question. What in your work comes from your own culture?" So Goldie Wilson's writing in Bidwin magazine. And certainly her approach contrasts greatly with that taken by a more recent generation of contemporary Lebanese artists such as Akram Zaatari, Rabia Mouré, Joanna Haji Thomas and Khalil Joriej, for example, and for whom the image is a slippery and evasive entity, and for whom art operates less in the realm of the symbolic than in that of the speculative provocation and indeterminacy. So in this talk, I want to propose a way of considering Hatoum's work that takes in some of these concerns for the image. A way of considering Hatoum's work that does not begin from this biography situated as it is in questions of or experiences of distance and exile, situated as it is around Hatoum's experience of otherness as a woman, as an exile, and as a non-Western woman living in London in the 1970s and 80s. Much of this experience forms the basis of Hatoum's work. It's represented or made visible in a very unambiguous way within her later sculpture and installation-based work through its representation of a feminine domestic, states of confinement and implicit and explicit violence. Hatoum's performance and video work explores the body in a highly visceral way, and as such, it does not avoid a biographical reading or avoid the themes mentioned above, but inhabits them in a performative, open-ended, and, quote, raw manner. The earlier performance and video work, I'll suggest, enacts these themes that the later work perhaps only symbolises. And it does this in a highly risky and experimental way. Significantly, for my own interests, which lie, as I said, in these intersections of the body and its relationship with technology, these works explore the boundaries and constitution of the body, questions of surveillance, access and distance or dislocation. As Kaylin Goldie Wilson also writes in her review in Bidwin, in her early videos and performances, ambiguity manifests itself in technological innovation and a refreshing crudeness of form. These works are messy, untidy things and compelling to behold. Of these early performance works, Hatoum talks of being compelled to produce work that was situated on the body through her experiences at the Slade in the late 1970s, an environment which she notes was, she recalls, was marked by a kind of cool intellectual inquiry. She says, "I had this distinct feeling that people around me were like disembodied intellects, and it was in opposition to this kind of attitude that I started focusing intensely on the body. First, using its products and processes as material for the work, and later using it as a metaphor for society, the social body." In his book on Palestinian art, Ganit Ankari suggests that performance became a form of language for Hatoum. He writes, and I quote, "Her vehicle for self-expression was a self-created dialect composed as an amalgam of body language and the language of art. In this language, she became masterfully fluent." While it's evident that Hatoum is indeed seeking a form of expression through, or to express herself through a language of the body in these early works, Ankari's romanticisation of themes of exile and estrangement, I think, overemphasise this aspect of Hatoum's work. What we see in these early performances is not only questions of displacement or distance, but a strong exploration of issues of confinement and surveillance in relation to developing technologies. Here the role of technology is tested and played out. So this is a work, as you can see, from one of Hatoum's earliest performance works, Don't Smile, You're on Camera. I'm particularly interested in this work and the first three pieces I'm going to talk through, again, as I said, because of this relationship with technology and kind of very early imaging technologies. So here, Don't Smile, You're on Camera is a video performance in which Hatoum, here you're seeing Hatoum with the screen at the front, and I haven't got an image of this, but behind this, like you're seated, is an audience. And in this, have you seen this work? Were you there when? Have you? No. No, you saw it at the tape yesterday. So in this work, Hatoum walks through the audience with a video camera, very large, of course. We're talking about 1980. A large camera, and she videos the audience's, individual members of the audience's body. Very, very, in quite a sort of invasive way. I think you'll have noted that the camera really sort of gets into people's bodily spaces. And it's interesting seeing the audience's reaction, isn't it? Because obviously everyone responds differently. Now, as the camera it films the bodies of the audiences, the clothed body. The image is transmitted to this screen here. It is live mixed with, as you can see here, X-ray images and images of naked body parts, which are then matched or mapped onto the transmitted images of the bodies of the audience. So we have here a kind of a case of a live performance that involves live mixing, video mixing, if you like. And in the second part of this performance, Hatoum turns the camera on herself and on her own body. And as you'll have seen at the Tate, there's a really extraordinary series of sketches that show the setup of this work, exactly how they had to hide the technology to transmit the image, the live image from the audience and mix it with the speakers. Is there... so Don't Smile, I would say, is quite a radical work in many ways, because there's particular implications for kind of being able to see our body in this way. And as I'll talk about later, in relation to corps étranger, these are kind of issues of scale and measurement. How do we measure our body in relation to other bodies, in relation to its own image, if we are able to enter into this kind of vast landscape, scaleless landscape of its interior. This is so much I wanted to say. Another performance work that involves video, again from 1981. Here we have a live performance with, again, video transmission. What's interesting about so much I wanted to say is, of course, the technology. We have an image here, a performance that is transmitted, a performance that is taking place in Vancouver, that is transmitted via satellite to Vienna via what we're told is called slow scan, which takes 8 seconds for an image to load. The image is transmitted via satellite, the voice via phone line. So much I wanted to say the image represents Hatoum's face being gagged, a voice that is literally violently muted. So much I wanted to say suggests difficulties of speaking through language, as well as the kind of physical inability to speak while you're being gagged. It speaks of a kind of transmission. Here, an uneven, messy, lumpy transmission of image that is absolutely contrary to much of what we expect of transmission of images, digital information today. An unevenness of technology. Technology here emphasises, I think, distances that are both spatial and temporal, contrasting to our assumptions today of a flat world that's characterised by a kind of a smoothness and immediacy of transmission and a flattening of time. So I think, for example, of the speed of connection via Skype or WhatsApp, for example. In contrast, so much I wanted to say speaks of the unevenness or distribution, not only of voice and the struggle to be heard, as we see very literally represented in the work, but also an unevenness of experience. which of course we know still to be true today with the precarious, increasingly precarious nature of so many people's lives. Writing in the late 1990s within the catalogue for the Modern Art Oxford show, Jessica Morgan notes that the work, which was shown here at Modern Art Oxford, quote, referred to the myth of the ability of electronic media to transcend national, cultural or economic barriers. So again, we have a questioning of the powers of technology here. And when I was watching this work and thinking about it, actually I was thinking about some of the claims for technology today. And even then, in 1984, don't know if people remember seeing the kind of the first Apple ad for the first Apple computer, which was transmitted in 1984, and their technology kind of appears as this kind of saviour of a sort of a grey, soulless, dull kind of humanity. So what I find interesting here is still this kind of hope for technology, this hope for a transmission of an image, of a body via image. But also, as Morgan suggests in her catalogue essay, this also being understood as uneven, a possible myth. Yes, another still from Look No Body. This performance, Look No Body, took place the 28th of March 1981 at the Basement Gallery in Newcastle. It lasted for 40 minutes. Hatoum says of this work, Look No Body, with Look No Body, I was considering the body in terms of its orifices, and how some of the orifices and the activities associated with them are considered socially acceptable and some not. I had a video camera in the place which was connected to a live camera in the toilet. I drank cups of water and offered every other cup to the audience, hoping to incite them to use the toilet. This is Mona Hatoum in conversation with Michael Archer. So here we have a performance that again centres around issues of surveillance and forms of confinement. Here, as you can see, Hatoum fills a bucket with a hose pipe fills plastic glasses of water with a hose pipe and drinks the water and offers it to members of the audience. The pressure hoping to obviously incite the need to go to the toilet, which of course is just outside the room, and your image, if you did go to the toilet, would be captured and projected back into the room. So here again we have this inversion of public and private space through the camera, through these modes, these forms of surveillance. If we thought that going to the bathroom was the kind of last sort of private space left available, in this case, it's not. The performance centres around this Orwellian Big Brother invasion of personal and public space, as we can see. Of this work, The Negotiating Table, Hatoum has said, and I quote, I was lying on a table, my body covered with entrails, bandages and blood, and wrapped in a body bag. There were chairs around the table and sound tapes of speeches of Western leaders talking about peace. It was basically a juxtaposition of two elements, one referring to the physical reality and brutality of the situation, and the other to the way it's represented and dealt with in the West. In Under Siege, negotiating table, changing parts, we have a direct concern with processing, with addressing, with dealing with contemporary political situations. As I said earlier, these works represent perhaps the most direct engagement with in Hatoum's work at the time, with the situation in Palestine, with war in Lebanon. This work, Roadworks, shows Hatoum again dealing, or through the process of performance, working through, again, a contemporary political situation. In this case, the work is a performance, a live performance, later realised as a still photographic image, which you will, I'm sure, have seen, and as a video. I think about a 6-minute video documentation of this performance. The performance Hatoum makes in response to riots in Brixton. This was performed in 1985. Hatoum walks through Brixton, a slow walk with these Doc Marten boots pacing behind her. To think of the context, we have Brixton riots in 1981, Handsworth riots also and the Toxteth riots also around this time, and again the more riots in Brixton in 1985. Questions of race, police brutality, questions that have been so central, of otherness, of marginality, issues that have been so central to Hatoum's work, played out on the streets. And we see Hatoum here, of course, processing this through this kind of action, this path through Brixton, and the response. I'd like to the duality, or the kind of separation between the experience of the body and its of being seen, of seeing and being seen. The body kind of inhabiting the body kind of in extension through this work, this careful movement through the streets that Hatoum takes, the response to people, if you've seen the video documentation, is something that's played out, I think, in this interesting duality between distance and proximity between the interior and exterior of the body. The interior sounds of the body, such as heartbeat and the sounds of digestion, form such an important aspect of Hatoum's work through these works, evoking a sense of presence, but also an immersive interiority, a submersion into the states of the body itself. And we see this, of course, in the early performances, Look, No Body, with the sound of the body, the heartbeat, and later works, as I said, such as Corps Étranger. The sound of the heartbeat calls forth the proximity of the body. It makes its presence felt with an immediacy. It evokes a proximity of the body that is then often countered by a distancing or a disjunction. For example, live work for a Black Room, a performance from 1981, which took place in an entirely black room, is an example in which Hatoum calls forth the proximity of the body, the presence of the body, and its remainder, a trace, an image of the body that's left as Hatoum traces the shape of her body where it has fallen. I think a little bit out of slides, a little bit out of order here. This interiority of the body, this soundtrack that calls forth, this heartbeat that calls forth a proximity of the body, is very much experienced in Corps Étranger, a video installation from 1994. Here, video is presented as a circular image set in the floor, and this work was exhibited here at Modern Art Oxford also. The video is presented here as a circular image set in the floor, and thus distance itself from the linear geometry of the square and its relationship to notions of rational knowledge. The video core that makes up this work is positioned in the floor and surrounded by a walled booth, a circular cylindrical wall booth. To watch the video, to watch the work, the viewer is positioned, therefore, in a situation of precarious closeness, hovering over the image, confined within the body of the work itself, almost falling into the image, almost immersed within the work. Here, questions of interiority, exteriority, the small and the gigantic, questions of what it is to be inside or outside the frame are activated. But activated in a strange way, because Corps Étranger is the inside of Hatoum's body. She, with the help of a medical specialist, a surgeon, inserts a camera inside her body. The camera enters the body, but it also travels across the surface of Hatoum's body. This disrupts scale. It also, again, disrupts our sense of being enclosed, being inside on being outside. It is also confusing for us as viewers of film or TV. Narrative film usually constructs for us a point of view that situates us within the action, a point of view that kind of tells us where we should be and constructs space around relative to that positioning. We don't have this in Corps Étranger. Scale is disrupted, the sense of inside and outside similarly confused. Dan Cameron notes in his essay for the exhibition here, Modern Art Oxford, again notes that the trajectory of the video is a constant forward momentum moving into, through and around tissue, organs and blood vessels. But the viewer's position, leaning over the seemingly concave surface onto one which the journey is being projected, suggests both a kind of presumption of superiority. We are, after all, elevated above the artist's own biological predicament, as well as an implied danger ascribed to the possibility of pitching forward into the same quivering mass, but which in this instance is felt as an extreme manifestation of Hatoum's subjectivity. In her essay for the catalogue accompanying Hatoum's exhibition, Morgan begins her essay with a discussion of this work, Corps Étranger, in which she evokes these questions of scale, suggesting that the work evokes, quote, a kind of perceptual disorientation that suggests either a miniaturized version of something immense or a detail of a form too gigantic to be presented whole. And she goes on to discuss this in relation to Susan Stewart's book on longing. What I find, particularly evocative about Corps Étranger is this proximity of image, this kind of precariousness of being on the edge of immersion, of being on the edge of submersion into the image world of our own body, and perhaps into the imaging of our own interior states of body or of bodiliness. So I think I'll just finish there so that we can have some discussion. Thank you very much.